Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of the Roaring Agents podcast. Today, I have Katie Lance. She has been in marketing for over 20 years, and she's been focusing on real estate for the last 17 years or so. And I just really thought this would be a great time to bring someone on. A lot of changes are going on in real estate where it's not so easy to sell a house as it was. We got to work a little bit harder. So we need to be getting our story out there. And Katie is fantastic at helping you build up your story, planning content, what to do, where to do it. So thank you for joining, Katie.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I'm really excited to be here.
Why real estate marketing versus all the other marketing out there? Why with us crazy realtors do
I
you want to
know.
play in the sandbox?
Well, I've always, been kind of in the world of marketing and communications, and I got my start in real estate back in 2005. I was hired by a local real estate brokerage in the San Francisco Bay Area where I live, and at the risk of sounding corny, I really fell in love with the industry. And I think there's actually two big reasons. I think the first is I just love the entrepreneurial spirit of a real estate agent. Agents and brokers work harder than just about anybody that I've ever met. They're wearing, 27 different hats, and I just love that. And then the second thing is, when you think about buying and selling a home for the consumer, for most people, buying and selling a home is one of the biggest moments of their life. It's right up there with getting married or having kids. It's very different than, selling a coffee cup or a pen or, whatever it might be. And so I just those two things really really kind of stuck with me. And I'm here, not going away.
So real estate marketing has changed so much since 2005. I mean, social media really wasn't even a thing. We had MySpace, but Facebook really wasn't there yet. So
Yeah.
how much were you at the least bit slow, or did you dive right in when social media showed up?
I think, gosh, it has been a while, but looking back, I remember thinking, yeah, there's MySpace, and then I remember when Facebook came around, it's like, why do we need Facebook? We have MySpace, right? And I remember in the early days, really for real estate, blogging started to really kind of come to the forefront. Active Rain was a big thing. That's where I first started blogging, was back on Active Rain, and it was really those early conversations of put your voice out there, create content. How does a brokerage or an agent compete with some of the, Google searches that are out there? There's kind of those early conversations around SEO and content and social media. This is obviously before the iPhone, right? A lot of us had, the flip phones or the flip cameras, and kind of the early days of video. So I do remember early on thinking like, wow, this is a really cool opportunity, mainly because at the time I was working as a marketing director for a real estate brokerage, and I was the person helping to put together the newspaper ads and the magazine ads and the all the postcards and the traditional marketing. And a lot of that still works. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I also saw how much agents and brokers were spending, just an exorbitant amount of money. And I thought, this is a pretty incredible opportunity to have platforms where you can post and share and market yourself and not really spend any money. I mean, unless you're spending money on ads, and obviously your time is money. But I just remember thinking, this is a really cool opportunity. It's like word of mouth on steroids. And so it intrigued me. And I remember going to Inman in the early days. That was where my first kind of introduction to Inman was. And then a few years later, I ended up working for Inman for a number of years. And so, so just kind of a snowball into, and now here we are. I mean, obviously things have changed quite a bit. We've got TikTok and Instagram, and all kinds of stuff right at our fingertips.
I remember I went to some class that the association put on, real estate association in my area, and there's a guy there, and he said, "Look, you need to get on Facebook. There are 50 million people on there, and you need to be one of those people." I was like, "Do I? 50 million?"
Yeah, right. Yeah, you think of how Facebook was back in the day, before fan pages, business pages. I mean, just to think back to how it was just with your friends and family, and how it's evolved in so many ways now.
Let's say someone's brand new and they're not really into social media for whatever reason. If you could only pick one, I know, tough.
It's a tough question.
Which one would you say to pick right now in this climate?
Yeah. It is a tricky question. I mean, my answer to that question, usually is it, again, it depends, right? I always say, number one, where do you want to be? If you have explored a few different platforms, is there a certain platform that maybe you enjoy, whether it's TikTok or LinkedIn or Facebook? Also, where are your clients hanging out? I think that's a really important question. I think a lot of times we just assume where our clients or our prospects are. One thing I always recommend is send an email to your database. You know, you might send an email saying, hey, we're working on serving you better through our social media marketing, and we're curious, where are you hanging out?
Mm.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, none of the above. And sometimes you're pleasantly surprised. As far as like brass tacks and like, okay, well, what actual platform should you actually start on? I actually do think LinkedIn is a great place to start for a lot of folks, because it's really one of the only professional networks. A
Mm.
lot of people think of LinkedIn as like just the place that you post when you're trying to find a job, but it gives you a lot of that professional credibility. When you get Googled, LinkedIn is usually one of the first things that pops up. So that's a great place to kind of dip your feet into the water, so to speak, if you're not, quite ready for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever the other platforms might be. Just that professional credibility, I think, is super important.
So TikTok has changed a lot from beginning of the pandemic to where we're at now. It's
Yeah.
a lot less dance videos. And there were people who were saying this is going to be the next place. You don't have to dance on TikTok. What success have you seen by any of the people you're coaching, people you're talking to on TikTok, and how are they getting there?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved. I think a lot of people jumped on TikTok early 2020. A lot of people were in lockdown and, looking for some entertainment. And TikTok has, I think, changed the game in a lot of ways. The way the platform works is you constantly are seeing content from people that you don't know, which is really different than Facebook or even Instagram. I mean, you go to any other social media platform and it's all about your friends and your connections, and it's very different in that way. And that's why I think there is a unique opportunity for real estate. It's an opportunity to get your voice, your brand, your content in front of people who don't know you, but who may be interested. I think the algorithm with TikTok is pretty fascinating. I know my TikTok feed is different than my husband's. Is different than other people I'm connected to. So it's really based on what do you like, what videos are you watching, and TikTok does a pretty incredible job of serving you up content that they think you're going to be interested in based on how long you've watched other videos, who else are you following, what have you commented or interacted with. And for real estate, I think we're kind of in the infancy of it, to be honest with you.
Mm.
I think a lot of people resisted it. Like you said, Mike, I think people thought, oh, I don't want to dance and point and look ridiculous. And, for some people, if that's their personality, that's awesome. But I think the bigger picture is this short form video content, this vertical video content that is immersive. It takes up your whole screen. You don't see anything else except that one video when you're watching it. And so we've
Mm.
seen Instagram roll out Reels, Facebook has Reels, TikTok has YouTube Shorts, and I don't think we can ignore it. I don't think we can ignore that short form content. I don't necessarily think everybody has to be on TikTok, but I think it's you can't ignore it either. I really think it's got to be a part of your marketing mix for 2022, 2023, and beyond.
You know, you said something really interesting I hadn't thought about is how those vertical videos do take up the entire screen.
Yeah.
You are not going to be as distracted by anything else that's on there. If you're on Facebook, it's weird that I'm thinking about this. I am kind of looking at the video and going, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And so taking up the full video does take your whole attention. It's only going to last. I mean, it's changed now, but it's about a minute is what you're expecting.
Yeah.
And so you're like the next thing, which is a whole dopamine issue and all that. But I hadn't even really thought about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because back in the day we would always say, don't film video up and down, turn your camera, right? Like we live in a widescreen world, which in a lot of ways we do. Our laptops are widescreen, our movie theater screens, and there's certainly a place. I still think there's a place for long form video like this, like podcast content, interview content, educational content, YouTube content. I don't think that's going away, but
Yeah.
there is something about that full screen, immersive, short form. It's bingeable, right? And so people are spending hours a day on TikTok because it's really enjoyable and it's immersive, So it's definitely one to watch. And it's not too late. I think a lot of people are feeling like, oh, I didn't jump on 2 years ago. No, it is not too late. Like jump on, and the more it's like anything, the more you do it, the better you get. Everybody starts at ground zero, so you may only, start with 3 people who follow you, but you start and you grow and you never know what could happen. You put yourself out there, it's amazing what could happen.
It's kind of like real estate. Oh, it's too late. That's what they've been saying for 30 years. Oh, it's too
Right.
late. I can't buy now. No, it's too late.
Right. Or there's
And
so many
there's
realtors in my area already. Yeah, but they're not you. So there's opportunity for everybody.
what I had explained to me was Facebook and Instagram are based off the social graph, and TikTok is the interest graph. And even before you really scroll, it takes a guess based on your age, your gender, whatever else you put in there. And you're right, my TikTok was completely different than my niece's, completely different than her boyfriend's, and we're all getting something completely different. And then it changes as you like. There'd be some people that I'd see. I was doing this thing where I didn't want to like anything. I didn't like anything, didn't follow anyone. I wanted to see what would happen with
Yeah.
the system. I didn't want to learn. I just want to see what happened. And it stayed with my interest. And there were some people I was like, oh, I hope I see them again. And they've just filtered away and they're not there anymore. I don't know if they're producing
Mm.
different content, but it is. And I think that goes to a long ways at TikTok. It may be easier to get noticed because it is delivering so much more
Yeah.
randomness.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are like you. I was on the platform for a long time before I ever liked, commented, or even made any content because I just, like a lot of people, just felt like, let me lurk a little bit, and I think with any new platform, I don't think there's anything wrong with just kind of seeing like, well, is this the right space to be in? Because we've all seen platforms that get a lot of buzz and then they kind of wither away or they disappear. So, it is interesting though to see that, and like you said, the interest graph versus the social graph, and also how those two interact. One of the things we're seeing from a lot of folks who are trying to build their TikTok is people who are taking their TikTok videos and then repurposing them, right, sharing them on other platforms or sharing that TikTok link. So, like for me, one of the things I've been doing is sharing my TikToks to Twitter, right, or to other platforms, just to kind of see, what kind of traction is happening from other platforms. So, we're experimenting a little bit. We'll see what happens.
You got to experiment.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's jump on that a little bit. There's got to be a lot of failure that happens when you're experimenting, when you're trying something. And I think that fear of failure is what holds a lot of people back from doing these things. What's what's your relationship with failure?
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to look stupid. Nobody wants to look like they don't know what they're doing. I One of the things I always try to tell myself, and it has become kind of a mantra that I've been saying in a lot of our trainings, and that is, done is better than perfect. And I have to take that on advice. I literally say it to myself all day long. I have a little plaque on my desk that says that because I'm the type of person where it's like, if it's not perfect, it's not the most edited, I don't look great, blah, blah, blah. There's that, I'm not going to post it, I'm not going to do that. But I think we just are living in a time where, you got to put yourself out there. A lot of folks, I think, get caught up in how they look and how they sound. A lot of women that I work with, I don't think it's just a female thing. I think a lot of folks, deal with that in general. And I always have to remind people, I even remind myself, like, look, that's how you look. That's how you sound. You got to get over it. And I think, to your question about failure, it's part of the process. You ask any great successful person, there's always been, some misses, some failures along the way. And I try to look at things as a learning lesson, just like I teach my kids, like, hey, tried that, didn't work. Okay, what did we learn from it? Like, what can we apply and move on? So,
I'm a big fan of Canva. And I think you're a big fan of Canva.
yeah.
Should everyone be using Canva?
I mean, I don't know if everybody needs to, but I think it is a pretty awesome platform. Canva's been around for a long time. It's gotten, I think, better and better. There's obviously the free version, which is really robust. I think the paid version. I'm not affiliated with Canva at all. I get no monetary value from promoting Canva, but I think it's an awesome platform to be able to, brand yourself quickly and easily. I think the key though to Canva is make sure you're not just posting a lot of generic stuff, right? There's some great templates that are in Canva, and it's really tempting to go, oh, that's great. I'll just download that and slap my logo on and we're good to go. And I think we're at this interesting point in social media where you can kind of tell when people are just sort of like dialing it in, right? There's like this sea of sameness we sometimes see in real estate marketing. It's like anytime there's a holiday or we got to change our clocks, like we kind of see the same type of marketing. And sometimes with Canva, that can happen. So I love Canva, but I think it's also important to make sure that agents are putting their own voice out there, like not just like dialing it in with the stock photos, like just adding in their own experience, your expertise, their personality. I think is gonna make them stand out. But yeah, Canva's fantastic. There's some obviously great templates for graphics. There's Reels templates in there. You can make YouTube thumbnails in there. One of the things I love with Canva is batch creating content. So I always tell agents, look, if you're gonna create one piece of content, let's say you found a great template that's a testimonial. Well, why not go in and create like 5 or 10 testimonial graphics? Go to all the places where you have testimonials, grab some of those, create some great graphics, and then maybe once a week for the next 10 weeks, you've got Testimonial Tuesday or whatever it might be. So it kind of comes down to working smarter, not just harder, especially with content. Canva makes it really easy for that.
I made a video yesterday and I was trying to create this thing because it was about how these one half of this class did 100 photos and the other half just had to do one. And I wanted to have these pictures just pop up as kind of get the idea of 100, even though it was 100. And I was trying to do it in the editing software. I was like, this isn't going to work. I was like, oh, wait, Canva. And then Canva's got the animate. And it had all these options. And so I just had these things go pop, 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 pop. And it was pretty much how I saw it in my head, except for I just didn't take the time to make 100 photos. And I keep forgetting about how powerful this thing is. And Instagram, you've got a ton of great tips on there that I've seen
powerful.
things on there that have helped me. Canva, for anyone who wants to kind of make some stuff, they have got the color palettes too. So you can kind of get that, because what you're talking about is kind of finding your brand.
Yeah, if you're someone who doesn't quite have color palettes or brand, I mean, you can just Google like Canva branding resources. They have a ton of free just help and resources in terms of like helping you get a palette together. I've had agents inside of our Get Social Smart Academy who've created logos within Canva, figured out their fonts. And once you figure that all out, if you have a Canva Pro account, there's this thing called Brand Kit, where you can upload your logos, add your colors, add your fonts, and then it just makes everything like 10 times easier. So when you are looking at a great template and it's, hot pink, but your colors are red and blue, you can just change it to the right shade of red, or the right font. And it just it's amazing like how easy it is to make those changes. And then one of the things I love, I don't know if you've seen this, Mike, but when you're designing in Canva, if you have your brand kit set up, and sometimes we're like, I don't know, should this background should be red? Should it be this color? Should it be that color? Once you have your brand kit set up, there's a little button that says Styles, and you click Styles, and you can actually shuffle through your brand colors, which is really cool. So my brand colors are like red, teal, white, and if I've got a template, I can just hit shuffle, and it's going to shuffle through my brand colors, so I can see like, oh, I like the font in that color. Oh, I like the background that color, and it's again just a really cool little thing that I love with Canva.
I had no idea.
It's super fun. Yeah.
So many things.
So many things. Yeah. And the video editing, I mean, for people who are struggling a little bit with video, like you can go into Canva, you can upload your own video, you can even create your own video. If you don't want to deal with like setting up your phone and a tripod, but maybe you're more comfortable just like talking to your laptop and you've got a webcam, this is one of the things, again, in our academy, a lot of folks are doing. They're just creating a quick, like 1-minute videos, like horizontal videos that they can throw up on Facebook and then resize in Canva into like vertical for TikTok or Reels or whatever. So,
wow,
yeah, it's awesome. There's my little Canva commercial.
Well, I've been using the where it puts you as a little circle while you're.
Yes.
So I'm doing stats. I'm like, well, okay, here's our market stats, and I was using Bomb for that for a while, but I was like, and then I was using Loom. And then on Zoom, it's just a square. But yeah, to have that little circle down there looks so professional, and you can change the size, and it's good for what it costs.
If you don't want to be full screen, I taught this recently. We did something called Canva Camp in our academy, and that little thing alone, people were like, wait a minute, I don't have to be full screen on a Canva video. I was like, no, you want to do it like you said, Mike, like you want to do a video about stats, upload a graphic to your stats or show your website, and then you can just be a little picture. A little round circle in the corner or square or whatever, and it looks great. Yeah, I love it.
I remember probably 8 years ago or so, friend showed this to someone who's a professional graphic designer, and they're like, wow, this thing's pretty powerful. To do what it could do, it gives you a big leg up. So yeah, great stuff.
Sure.
So let's talk story, because none of this matters if you don't have a great story. And I saw this cool image and it's got Legos, and it's just a stack of Legos, and it says, here's the data. And then it's got it in lines. It's like, well, here's the data on a graph. And I think it has one more, and then it's got a house in Legos. And it's like, there's the story. And
Hmm.
I get stuck sometimes. I get excited about statistics. If I don't have a story, unless you're a statistics geek like me, you don't really care. But how do we come up with stories? And we've got several homes and we've got several things. How do we craft the story without making it boring and repetitive and keep things interesting?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think like storytelling is such a buzzword right now, but I think it's important because, especially with social media, the default what a lot of people do by default is they just post the facts of something, right? It's like, here's the number of homes on the market, and this is how many sold, or I have a new listing, 4 bedroom, 2 bath, open Sunday 1 to 4, or I did this, I won this award. Those are all facts, and ultimately the response a lot of times, especially for the viewer, is like, okay, so what? Right? And so I
Right.
think if you can think about stories in sort of the sense of how does something make you feel, I feel like that's a little bit of an easier way to think about storytelling. So, for example, with a new listing, instead of saying new listing, 4 bedroom, 2 bath, open Sunday 1 to 4, you might craft that by saying, when you walk in the front door, I wonder if you'll feel what I felt when I first walked in the front door. Or you won't believe the story of this home remodel. And I think it's just sometimes thinking about how something makes us feel, even something as simple as like your kids go back to school. Okay, so you post a picture of your kids going back to school. But like, how does that make you feel, right? Like, I'm sentimental because, like, gosh, my kids are starting high school, and I remember when they walked in the front door, with kindergarten. And so I think we can think about that personally, but also, professionally with stats, same thing. If there's 100 homes on the market and they're selling at this price and this price, it's like, well, this is important, and here's why, right? Or, I had a conversation with a client about what's happening in the market, and this was their response, or this was their situation. So I think, again, kind of taking a step back and going like, how does that make you feel? Like, what's the why behind it? A story doesn't always have to be like a life or death experience or I climbed Mount Everest. It's just kind of taking a step back and thinking of like the so what. If I was reading this, why do I care? Why is this important? And how can you, I don't want to say appeal to someone's emotional side, but it is, that's part of it. It's that, not just the facts. It's kind of drawing people in. So, and I would also say too, just I think there can be work done, for a lot of agents thinking about what is their why. Why are they in real estate? Why do they love what they do? Whether they're new to real estate or whether they've been doing this 30 or 40 years. What's their story? How did they get into real estate? Who's the first buyer they work with? The first seller they work with? What was the home like that they grew up in? Why do you love what you do? Who do you love to work with? Who do you not want to work with? And like kind of doing a little bit of that work behind the scenes on your own story and your own voice, I think makes a big difference. And that will come out in how you show up online. I think when you don't do that, a lot of times we just sound really vanilla. We sound like everybody else, because we don't want to be offensive. We don't want to polarize. We don't want to, we want to be professional. But like, if you can just really kind of like lean into who you are and who you're not, you won't be everyone's cup of tea. Some people won't like it, but that's okay. Those people aren't your people, You don't have to be all things to all people. So that was a long answer to your question, Mike.
Oh no, I love it. I love it. I don't want to do most of the talking, so it's perfect.
Good.
So a couple of questions came up, or a couple of thoughts. One was that there's some people is like, well, no one really cares what I about my story. I know that there's people who think that. And then the other one is people are saying, well, I don't have enough clients. So I don't want to say anything that would keep someone from working with me. I do want everybody. And I know what you're saying is right, but what do you say to those people to give them the confidence to be more of themselves, to put themselves out there?
I mean, I think there's a couple things. I think sometimes we're just too close. Like, we're too close to our own life. I often think, like, like who cares, right? I often think like, are people really going to think this is interesting? Like, because you're just like too close to your own life. But, I also look at, I know for myself, there's certain people I follow on Instagram or TikTok or even Facebook where, if they don't show up for a couple of days, I'm like, oh, what's so and so up to? Like, I'm interested in their stories. I'm interested in what they're posting because they're sharing things that are, you know, that are more than just business, like more than just, hey, new listing, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oftentimes someone will reach out to me on Instagram and they'll say, well, what do you think of my feed? And I won't see them anywhere on their feed. I'm like, I don't even know what you sound like. Like, I want to see you on camera. And a lot of people are like, I don't know, I'm getting there. I'm like, no, I want to see you on camera now. Like, I have no idea. How can I know who you are if all you're posting are like these like generic content that everyone else is posting? So I think that's part of it. I think part of it's kind of psychologically getting over it. And then the other part of your question, as far as like, maybe you don't have a lot of clients, I think you got to kind of take people along with you for the ride. Like, what are you doing? How are you prospecting? How are you reaching new people? You're out and about. You're in your community, reaching out to folks in your community, and just kind of taking people along with you on your journey. Maybe you do some content on who you want to work with. Maybe you're fully transparent on like, hey, this is where I'm at in my business, and this is where I want to go, and this is why you should work with me, and just I think that kind of that transparency, that authenticity, it's a little scary for some people, but there's a big opportunity because a lot of people are not doing that, you know?
What I tell people is that if you'd told an agent in the 90s that this existed, that they would not have to pay thousands of dollars to be on 7 a.m. on the TV or something, and they would all be clamming for this. But because
Yeah.
it's here and it's easy, like, well, later, whatever.
Well, and I also think if you haven't experienced the success from it, you don't understand. Like, I'm just telling, for anyone watching this, like, when you put yourself out there, whether it's video content on TikTok, Instagram, wherever, when you really put your own voice out there, when you get a plan together, because that's part of it right there, is getting a plan, getting a system, putting your voice out there, connecting with people, being a little vulnerable, it doesn't happen overnight. But Mike, it's like, it's a snowball. And what ends up happening is you start attracting business versus chasing leads. You start having people come up to you in the grocery store and they're like, I know you. How do I know you? Or they'll just talk to you as if they know you because they feel like they know you. Or they'll reach out to you, they'll start sending you DMs, talking to you as if they know you. I cannot tell you, I get dozens of DMs every day. And I'm like, who is this? Right? I don't know it. But they know me because I've put myself out there. And so it's just a really cool way of doing business, right? Instead of chasing leads, you're attracting people by being who you are, putting out helpful content. It's not all about me, but you're sharing helpful content, you're being informative, you're sharing who you are, you're taking people behind the scenes. And if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to put the time into creating a plan and being strategic about it, man, it's friggin' awesome. It is like the best way to do business, and you can get away from spending tons of money on ads and all this other stuff. It's I know I'm biased, but it's a pretty awesome way of doing business.
Hashtags. Are hashtags really valuable anymore? My understanding is they're kind of dead on Instagram.
Yeah, there's a couple different schools of thought. I mean, I think where they make the most sense is Instagram and TikTok. A little bit on Twitter, but really Instagram and TikTok. And even Instagram, I mean, Instagram, you're still allowed to put up to 30 hashtags on a post. Really, it seems like from the most recent data and where things are moving, I feel like less is more. And again, we're kind of always experimenting with different things, but I find that the more niche hashtags still tend to work better. If you are getting a lot of spam on your account, a lot of people get a lot of spam on Instagram. It might be because you're using hashtags that are these huge hashtags. Like if you're, for example, hashtag real estate probably has 20 million people using. It's too big, right? It's better to use like hashtag Denver homes for sale, like something more specific. So again, I think less is more. Don't reuse the same ones over and over again. TikTok, I think it's so there's a couple different schools of thought. People recommend using trending hashtags and whatnot. I don't know. I think it's a little too early on TikTok to really see if they make a huge difference. Maybe not. I think the most important thing I think with Instagram specifically and TikTok really is thinking about who you want to attract, what's your content all about, what value do you bring, and really brainstorming a content strategy. Thinking about the questions you get asked all the time and things like that. So yeah,
Let's talk content strategy, because that is, if I can get people past videos,
right.
then their next question is, but I don't know what to post. And I like what Gary Vee says is document, don't create. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what what you're saying is just go through your day and talk about what's going on, the things you're seeing, what you're doing, who you're talking to.
Yeah.
But they get a little bit overwhelmed. And I saw that you have a guide on katielance.com, the content grid. Talk a little bit about those resources you have for people.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with Gary Vee's philosophy of document, but I also do think you do have to create some content. I think there's a balance with both. And so I think documenting is what's going to help you build relationships with people who already follow you, people who already know, like, and trust you. People are like, I like that guy, Mike. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to watch his stories, right? Like where you're kind of taking people along. You look at your life as content. You're at a home inspection. You're at a baseball game with your kids. You're just kind of sharing, not everything, but you're kind of sharing and documenting and kind of taking people behind the scenes. But I also think that there's some value in creating content. And this is where I think a lot of folks, especially in real estate, tend to have a little bit of a stumbling block. And this is one of the reasons why we created our content grid. We created this years ago and we update it every year because content changes all the time. But it's this idea of, if you're going to sit down and create one piece of content, you might as well create 4 or 5. And this idea of kind of batching content all in one sitting and creating content that's somewhat evergreen or timeless. So whereas your documenting, creating might include market stats, because that's relevant today, but it's not really relevant 6 months from now. Your content you're creating kind of a content library, right? So it's things like who pays for what and how to find a lender and why should you stage and how to declutter, like all this stuff that you get asked all the time that you think, oh my gosh, if I get asked this one more time, that's a great piece of content, right? So it's kind of balancing the both of documenting but also creating content. And that content you create, especially if you can get in the habit of batch creating content. I've been doing this for probably 6 years. I set aside a day once a month, a couple hours once a month, or I batch record 4, 5, 6, 8 videos all in one batch. Those are for the next month. So they don't get posted right away, but you create them all in one chunk, and then you can, cross promote them and repurpose them on multiple platforms. The content grid, as you mentioned, is a place for people to get some ideas when it comes to content, because like you said, a lot of people just get stuck. So yeah, folks, go to my website, just katielance.com/content grid, put your name and email in, and we'll send you a spreadsheet. It's got like 30 or 40 content ideas. And the way a lot of people use it, they print it up, they've got it right by themselves, and when they're sitting down to create some content, post content, they've got ideas, right in front of them.
What is your feelings on automation?
I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with automation. I think in some ways it can be okay. I just think you have to be careful, and I think the challenge with especially automation with social media is a lot of people like do the set it and forget it, where they sign up for a service, they pay for something, and a lot of times what happens is I get the calls or the emails. People are like, I've paid for this service for 6 months and it's okay, or it's not, doesn't feel like me or whatever. So I just think you have to be careful. I think sometimes automation can be a good supplement to, showing up on a consistent basis. What I think is actually even more important is scheduling content. So instead of just like automating some generic content, I think it's really valuable if you can take some time, again, maybe once or twice a month, where you batch create a bunch of content, video content, could be Canva content, and then spend an hour or two and schedule some of that out. I think the good news is I don't think you have to post every single day or multiple times a day. Maybe you think to yourself, okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I want to have a post up. So you sit down and you schedule a post for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Maybe it's Monday motivation or Wednesday wisdom or featured Friday or whatever it might be. And now you've got that content consistently going out there, because every platform, they want that consistency. That's how you kind of, get traction in the algorithm, so to speak. And then you can show up and make sure you're responding to comments. and posting kind of organically in the moment. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, a little bit of a love-hate relationship, but I do think scheduling is important. And there's so many great tools you can schedule through Canva. I love Facebook Business Suite. I don't love it, but I think it's a great tool. It's very robust. There's other tools like Later. I've used Later.com for years. Hootsuite's kind of an oldie but goodie. So there's a lot of fairly low-cost tools that will help you kind of systemize your content.
Yeah, I use Later just because I'm very visual, and to see that lined up on a calendar
Yeah.
for me is easy. Hootsuite I was using for a long time, and they changed some things up, and then ended up at Later. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're both great. It just kind of depends, sort of apples and oranges, how you like to work. Later is actually a really great tool. I do like it a lot. They've got a great app also, so you can schedule stuff. A lot of times I will schedule stuff, and they have an option where you can not just automate it, but basically you can schedule it. You probably know this, but you can schedule it, but then I will look at my phone and go, okay, I'm going to actually push it manually live right now. And sometimes that's nice, especially with everything going on in the world. I think we also have to be cognizant of like, there's a lot happening in the world, and sometimes it's not necessarily appropriate to push, your video about moving tips if something just happened an hour ago, right? So I kind of like having stuff scheduled, but knowing that I can go in and go, yeah, this is the one I want to post today, and it's all written out, it's all ready to go. I just hit a button and push it live.
that was a big thing early in Twitter when people were, big companies were having these, tweets, and then some big natural disaster, and they're still, hey, get an Oreo or whatever.
Right.
They've
Hey,
learned their ways since
yeah,
then.
totally. You don't want to be tone deaf. I mean, you have to be, aware of what's happening. Read the room.
So I see your books behind you are color coded.
Yes, they are.
So one thing I like to ask marketers about is color. I see these things that this color equals this, and this brand is this color. Is this true, or is it more like the zodiac signs?
I mean, I do think that there's some weight to that. I think each of us has our own feeling about certain colors. I was just chatting with a dear friend of mine. Yeah, I mean, I love the bright colors. It's fun. It's colors mean certain things to different people. If you favor a certain sports team, certain shades of color are going to resonate with you, or if you're alma mater or whatever it might be. I know for me, I've always loved red. It's always been one of my favorite colors. So I've got, my whole office is kind of decked out in red and teal, and I love that kind of that vibrancy. So I think part of it kind of goes with what, like you said, what resonates with you. I was chatting with someone earlier, and their brand colors are just a little bit more muted, and it made me feel like, oh, just a little, like that feeling of warm and welcoming. And so I think it kind of depends on what the vibe that you're trying to attract. So, but it is kind of personal. It's almost like a logo or your fonts. You have to really resonate with it if it's your brand colors.
Yeah, that's how I see it. With Instagram, you've got the push for reels. I've heard some people saying that Instagram itself is kind of, the posts are not getting as much attention, and it's really about reels. Have we lost? Should we not be focusing that much on that content and more on reels if we have the time? What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of controversy right now in the Instagram world. There's a lot of people kind of up in arms at Instagram. They're saying we don't. If we wanted TikTok, we would go to TikTok. But I think Instagram's feeling the heat because TikTok is gaining a ton of traction. People love the vertical, immersive videos, and so, Instagram is kind of moving over to that way, whereas reels are getting priority. Most videos are getting, kind of shoved into the tab of reels. So, yeah, I think some people have mixed feelings about it. As far as specific posts, I still think that carousel posts, posts with multiple photos or multiple graphics, still tend to perform really well. We post those probably once or twice a week. And for us, our carousel posts are really educational. So it's Canva tips or Instagram tips or social media tips because that's our business. But we're seeing a lot of folks who are in our academy or who we work with who are creating carousel posts for their listings. They've got a beautiful photo in the front, and then they're kind of letting the house shine and showing the other, 8 to 10 photos in a carousel post, or they're taking educational content. If they, for example, we have one agent in our academy who does a lot of reels, and she'll do like quick little tips on, moving or relocating, and she'll take the content from that reel and then she'll also make a carousel post about it.
Mm.
So the reel goes up, let's say, I don't know, on a Monday, right? And it's fun, and then maybe there's music, and it's 30 seconds or a minute. But because she's already sort of written out like what those 3 tips are, she can go over to Canva, create something similar in a carousel, post it 2 weeks later, and it's the same but different, right? So kind of a way to just kind of get in front of a new audience. And with carousel posts are still showing up in the newsfeed, typically 2 or 3 times more than just single graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's evolving. I mean, Instagram's under a little bit of fire right now, so
They backtracked on some of their supposed changes, right?
yeah, they did. They just got a lot of flack. I mean, a lot of people come to Instagram for photos. They love graphics. They don't want it to just be all videos. So they've kind of dialed it back a little bit. I do think what's really interesting about Instagram though is you have kind of a lot of different things happening with Instagram, right? Like you've got your stories, which are kind of for more behind the scenes and like nurturing people who already connect with you. You've got your highlights, which I also feel like a lot of people don't talk about, those highlights on your bio, which are kind of like your website, right? It's like the most important things of who are you, what areas do you serve, like what do I need to know about you. Then you've got your feed, which is also kind of like your website, right? Your feed is like the permanent posts of who you are, what you work, what you serve. And you've got reels. You even got Instagram guides, which I feel like that's also another area people don't really talk a whole lot about, but that's a
I
great.
know nothing about that.
Really? Oh, so guides are really cool. They came out a couple years ago. Hopefully they don't do away with them because I think it's really cool. Like, basically, you can go into Instagram and create a guide, which is basically one of two things. So you can create a guide where you're pulling some of your own posts and creating a guide. So for example, if you go to my Instagram and you click on the guides tab, I have like one about Instagram tips. And the guide is like links to all these posts that I've done on Instagram about, Instagram tips. So as a realtor, if you have posts about, moving or relocating or investing, you could take some of those posts, put them into a guide. It's kind of like a playlist. On YouTube, you've got playlists. It's kind of that same idea. You can also create a guide with other people's posts. So if you're a local realtor and let's say you serve, I don't know, the San Francisco Bay Area, and you have some posts about the San Francisco Bay Area, you add those to your guide. But you could also go to like the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce or SF Gate and add some of their posts. And now you've created like this kind of curated guide about moving to San Francisco. So it's kind of cool. I feel like not a lot of people talk about it. You can take your guide and then share it in other places. It's, again, kind of like YouTube playlists, kind of like Pinterest boards almost, if that makes sense. But so that's where I think Instagram is really wins because it's not just videos. It's all these different parts of your brand, if that makes sense.
I think for myself, I've kind of gotten stuck into this is the way I use it. And I really
Yeah.
don't look at the other things. And I heard some people saying you should be doing stories. And I was like, I don't look at stories. But then I started clicking on them and then I started using them. I was like, oh, there's a bunch of people, because then it shows you who's looking. I was like, I had no idea that this person was looking at my content or this person. I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And it's interesting that's a nice positive reinforcement to keep doing is like, oh, I see these people are using instead of just seeing a number. The
Yeah,
highlights,
and a lot of people don't realize that with stories you can see, 20 people look, not just 20 people looked at it, but who are the 20 people who looked at
right.
it. Yeah.
And the highlights, I never look at those. So I do you have any data or stories about people using the highlights and having effect?
Yeah. So with stories, as you know, they disappear, right? They're here today, they're gone in 24 hours. And so what's nice about highlights is you can take parts of your story and turn them into a highlight. You know, for example, I went on vacation this summer, went to Kauai, had a lot of people, I was posting throughout my stories. A lot of people were commenting and connecting, asking me questions, where do you stay, blah, blah, blah. I took all my stories, I put them into a couple different highlights. and I did a post about it. I said, hey, and obviously this isn't business related, but it's a way to connect and relate to people. I said, hey, for those of you asking, about my trip, I put them all into these highlights right here. And we've done that with a number of different things. We have a mastermind event coming up, which I've talked a bunch about on stories. And I'll say, hey, if you're curious about what it is or who it's for, like go to my highlight right there. It has information all about it. I've seen agents who created highlights about their community. Maybe once or twice a month they're interviewing folks in their local community, or they're taking pictures at their local coffee shop or whatever, and they can add those into a highlight, kind of a highlight all about their local community. Or they might have one about clients, as you are posting testimonials for your clients and you've got pictures of your clients in front of the sold sign. Why not have a highlight on your account that says, clients, or, we love our clients, or whatever it might be, or testimonials. So it's almost like when you go to someone's website, there's different tabs. There's a buyer tab, a seller's tab, a community tab, whatever. And it's kind of that same idea of having those sort of buttons that give people a sense of who you are professionally and also personally too. That's one of the beautiful things about Instagram. It doesn't just have to be all business. I have a business account, but part of what you see from me on Instagram is business and also personal. Not super private, because I think private and personal are two different things, but I share stuff with my kids time to time, and might share a great glass of wine, I have for dinner, or had with dinner. And so, I think it's a way to get people to get a sense of who you are. And one other quick thing I'll say with highlights, your bio, you're only allowed about 150 characters on your bio. So it's sort of limited real estate, no pun intended, but you don't have a lot about you. And if you want to grow your Instagram, one of the things you're probably going to start doing is you're probably going to see who else in your area is posting locally, right? Like, you might start going to like your local Chamber of Commerce, your local country club, who's posting. You're going to start interacting with people who don't know you, right? This is kind of like farming with Instagram. When you do that and people go, who's Mike? He just commented on my picture of me playing tennis. They're going to go to your profile, right? So they're going to see your bio. But if you have highlights, they're more likely to be like, oh, I want to check out, oh, he's a local realtor. Oh, he works in my area. Like, it just kind of gives people a sense of like who you are and what you're all about. And it gets people to stay on your profile longer. It's, if you can make your profile a little bit more bingeable like Netflix, that's a trigger to Instagram. Like, people are going to their profile. We're going to start showing your content to more people. So it's a pretty cool thing. And with Canva, you can create highlight covers within Canva. So like those little cute little buttons, you can create that within Canva too. So
I love that. I feel like I just got a little mini masterclass on Instagram. All these things I didn't realize.
I could go on and on. There's a lot of cool features for sure. Yeah, and I just think there's lots of opportunities. I feel like Instagram, even though there's a lot of changes happening with Instagram, there's also a lot of opportunity, a lot of engagement, a lot of opportunities to connect with people who don't know you yet, who aren't following you yet, and so yeah, lots of good stuff.
So you said LinkedIn earlier was one of the better platforms for someone just trying to be professional and all this, and they don't do vertical videos. And it's a completely different ecosystem. What are your basic ground rules of how to do well and manage your LinkedIn?
So I think there's like two things I would say for LinkedIn. I think first of all, you've got to like dust off your profile, like log in. If you haven't done it in a while, like you got to update your profile photo. You can have a little cover photo, kind of like how Facebook has banners. You want to have some sort of cover photo. Again, Canva, you can make one in Canva or resize if you've got a Facebook one. You want to make sure your contact information is there for sure. Like, don't be a secret agent. And then go through your profile and make sure you've got a summary. Who, what, where, why, and how. How long have you been in real estate? What market area do you serve? What designations do you have? Why did you get into real estate? Why do you love what you do? Like, it's kind of your time to brag, right? Tell me all about yourself. And then you've got your work experience. You don't need to go back 30 years, but at least like 10 years. Tell me what brokerage you're at. Again, if you have any designations, where were you before? If you went to college or your education, if you've taken any classes, take 30 minutes or so, update that. And then the second part of it is just like any other platform, spending a little bit of time on the platform. So LinkedIn does move a lot slower, I feel like, than other platforms, but if you can set aside, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, 10 or 15 minutes a day, where you're scrolling through, you're connecting with other colleagues, you're connecting with maybe past clients or even prospects you're working with right now, it's a really powerful thing. When you first meet a client, you're probably not going to want to like send them a friend request on Facebook. You just met them. It's a little creepy, but it's totally acceptable if you and I have had, a couple email conversations back and forth for me to go on LinkedIn and send you a message and say, "Hey, Mike, I really enjoyed chatting with you. Looking forward to our next conversation. Would love to connect here on LinkedIn." Right? It's that sort of next professional step. And then in terms of posting content, post a couple times a week on LinkedIn. It's a lot less cat videos and personal content. It's professional content. It's about the market. It's about real estate. You can post your listings periodically, but typically business related content tends to work best. I tend to repurpose some of the stuff that I'm posting on other platforms. Video content still works really well on LinkedIn. So if you're creating video content anywhere else, even vertical video, share it on LinkedIn. It's starting to get some traction over there. LinkedIn did try stories last year and then it shelved it. So I don't know, maybe they felt like people weren't, sharing their LinkedIn stories. But yeah, video content, LinkedIn Live is starting to become a thing. So
Oh,
the one last thing I'll just say really quick about LinkedIn for anyone who's like, oh, LinkedIn, right? So what is interesting about the people on LinkedIn is that LinkedIn a lot of times attracts people who are not on other platforms, especially like C-level executives. If you're trying to reach a certain type of client, a lot of times they're not hanging out on Instagram and they're definitely not on TikTok. Not always. So it just kind of depends on who is your target market, who are you trying to reach, and oftentimes those, especially someone like in an executive suite position, oftentimes is on LinkedIn, but they're kind of nowhere else to be found on social media. So just
interesting.
food
Yeah, I
for
like
thought.
that.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, I think you see why I had Katie on here. She is a wealth of information, knows her stuff really well. Real quick, can you explain Get Social Smart Academy?
Yeah, absolutely. For, anyone who's listening to this going, okay, I need to get a handle on my social media strategy in general, we would absolutely love to work with you. If you go to katielance.com/academy, we have our Get Social Smart Academy, which is a membership site. You can sign up monthly or yearly. And as a member, you get access to me. I do weekly group coaching and monthly masterminds. We do live training as well as on-demand training, and we've got calendars and templates and all kinds of good stuff to help you. And if you're not ready for that, we also have a ton of free resources just on our website. So if you just go to katielance.com or follow me on social media, we've got lots of great free resources. I would love to connect with anyone who's watching. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you, Mike. It was really a pleasure to be here today.